Good evening, everyone. Jason with Phase Shift Games. Happy to be here, and I have a very special guest with me tonight. Who are you, sir?
Hello, I'm Alex Cutler. I am the designer of Widget's Workshop, which we're going to talk about tonight. And that was a really intense intro. That was my pulse is up. Like it's it's good.
Oh, the music. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that intro. I've used that for several years now, but sometimes I actually just sit back and watch it because I just enjoy it.
When it switched from 11 seconds to 10 and it was like zooming right at you. There you go. Well, thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And thanks to folks who are watching. As always, it'd be great to just get a little ping in chat if you can confirm you can hear us all right and that the audio and video sync is working. But we've done this setup now a couple times and it seems to be working very well. So really looking forward to tonight. Interview here with Alex Cutler, as he said, the designer of Widget's Workshop. We got a lot of fun things to cover, so we'll get to each of those in just a moment. One thing I want to invite is all of you watching, if there are specific questions, thank you, Stephen, for confirming, by the way. If there are questions that you would like to ask or have asked of either of us relating to his game, relating to other games, relating to gaming in general, or just related to food or beer or whatever, please post in the comments. We'll see what comes through, and happy to address and have some fun with whatever kinds of questions you may have. But why we're here should be pretty obvious. We have a campaign coming up. It launches next Thursday. Where are we? Tuesday, March 4th. So next Thursday, March 13th, is the launch for Widget's Workshop. We're going to talk a lot about Widget's Workshop, but we're going to wait till a little bit later. But that's the reason that we are hosting this tonight. But before we get there, we've got a lot of other fun stuff to cover. So let's start with the obvious. Alex, people know me. They've seen me here a bunch of times. Who are you? And how'd you get started in what you're doing? Give us the TLDR of Alex Cutler.
Sure. So I'm a board game designer and developer. I've been working in the industry professionally for about 10 years. My first published game was Expansity, which I signed back in, I think, 2016. And that was around the time when I met you. Jason and I actually both used to live in the same area. I was up in New Haven, Connecticut, and Jason, you're just outside of there, right? So
mid-state, around the close
yeah,
to the market.
we would meet up at local gaming meetups and local game stores and things like that. So I've actually known Jason for a very long time. I think you're probably the, I don't know, second or third person in the board game industry I ever met. So it's great to finally start to work together.
Indeed. And we're going to talk a lot about that kind of history of how we got started. But yeah, I was trying to remember how we met. I know you had another friend, Alex, who I worked with at a company in New Haven. And I don't know if it was him that he introduced, but yeah, somehow we started meeting up at different gaming events and stuff like that. And how
so, you know, back then I was working different jobs. You know, I wasn't full-time in the board game industry. But then around the time of the pandemic, I started working full-time as the head of development for Pandasaurus games. So I'd gotten a few things published. I had made a lot of industry connections, and then I had started doing development work, which, you know, for anyone listening who doesn't know, development is just sort of the phase that comes after design. So design is making the game, and then development is making the game better or making it fit within what the publisher wants a little better. It's sort of that middle step between when the designer's done with it and when it comes out from the publisher. And that's sort of a for-hire type of role. So it's not as glamorous as design, but there tends to be a more guaranteed paycheck involved. So I was doing some development work. I was working for Pandasaurus freelance, and then they liked what I was doing. So I was the head of development for them for 3 years. And then I started to have a lot of success getting more of my own designs signed again a year, 2 years ago. And so I made the decision to go back to full-time design, which is what I'm doing now. So I consider myself designer and developer, but I'm at least hopefully for the foreseeable future, design is my first focus.
And your real passion, probably.
Yeah.
And now your wife also has worked in the industry professionally at several places, right?
That's right. So my wife, Nicole Cutler, we actually met in the board game industry. were working, just at different jobs, different companies. She worked at Jelly Bean for a while. Then she also worked at Pandasaurus. She worked at Arcane Wonders. And most recently, she works for Cardboard Alchemy, which is the company that does Flamecraft and Critter Kitchen and Andromeda's Edge. And so, yeah, we knew each other from the convention circuit, and then started dating, and now we've got 2 kids, and it's very much it's nice to be with somebody who, like, I can tell her about my work and she can tell me about her work, and we know what everything means.
You're not boring each other, putting each other.
Right.
That's awesome. So you already started touching on some of your other games. Let me pull up a picture here. Maybe you can bring everyone through a little bit of history of your published games, at least. I think maybe we'll touch on some of the side projects a little bit later, but take us through a history of, you mentioned Expansity, and let me just pull up this image here. I pulled in Expansity over there. You got some pinball and then some more recent ones at the top there. Take us through the history of your game design.
Sure. So Expansity was my first game. I started designing that, I think, way back in 2012. It was very much just a hobby project. I didn't know anything about the board game industry or how to get a game published. It was still the early days of Kickstarter too. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll run a Kickstarter. And then I met some folks when I was living in Connecticut who knew how sort of the convention circuit worked and how to pitch games and things like that. So I signed Expansity with Breaking Games, which is the publisher for that one. And from there, it was kind of just, I knew once that got signed that that's what I wanted to be doing. So I spent a lot of time and energy into making a lot of new games. I had the other one that came out around that time that did pretty well was Team 3, which is a cooperative
that's right.
party game where you're like stacking little things, and it's based off the 3 monkeys. So like one of you can't see, one of you can't hear, one of you can't talk, and that's a really, really fun little party game. I had like a bit of like a lull, I guess, during COVID when I was mostly doing development work, so my own stuff wasn't coming out as much. But I did have a few things. I had Don't Skip Leg Day from Pandasaurus Games, which it was like a workout themed game that came in a cute little like protein shaker bottle. We've got Tetorton, which is like a German game about little raccoons trying to sneak out and get trash. One of the ones here in your picture, Pinball Haunted House. I wasn't the original designer of that. That was Zach Connolly. I did development for that one for Pandasaurus. And then because it changed so much from what we signed to what actually came out, he was very, very kind to offer me a co-design credit on that. So I just want to shout out Zach since that one's up there.
Well, you're lucky, because I was going to shout to you that this is essentially a drop style game, as I call it, that I was not pitched.
So that one you'll have to take up with Zach then.
All right, I'll take it up with Zach.
And then, so the 2 games at the top are my more recent ones that have come out and done really well on Kickstarter. Critter Kitchen came out on Kickstarter last year. It's actually just starting to fulfill right now. That's from Cardboard Alchemy, so the publisher of Flamecraft. It's a worker placement game where you've got these 3 different sized meeples. So you've got a boar chef who's big, a lizard chef who's medium, and a mouse chef who's small. And it's a simultaneous location selection game. So you're sending your chefs out to different markets to get food that is placed there. And then the different sized ones can carry. The bigger they are, the more they can carry, but the slower they are to get there. So if you send your mouse, you're only going to be able to get one thing, but it's going to get one thing before my lizard can get 2 things. So there's this neat little puzzle of like, well, what do I want to prioritize? Where do I want to think I can get more things? And leads to some really cool player interactions. And then because it's simultaneous, it supports up to 7 players without really adding much to the playtime. It's got art by Sandara Tang, who did Flamecraft as well. And she's doing a bunch of stuff now too. I just got my deluxe copies from the Kickstarter, and the amount of like bling they were able to shove into the box is absolutely insane. So very excited by that one. The other one, which just was on Kickstarter about a month ago, is A Place for All My Books. That's from Smirk and Dagger Games. That is a sort of cozy game where you and the other players are a bunch of introverts. You really like reading, but you don't really like socializing so much. You're trying to collect and sort books in a grid around your apartment, and the resource in that game is your social battery. So by performing these little actions and doing these things that bring you happiness, you're able to build up your social battery. And when it gets high enough, you're then able to have the energy to go out into public and go to the town square and go to the bookstore and get more books and see other people and do more things. And then that depletes you and you have to come back home and recharge by doing the things that bring you happiness. So very, very cozy. Super excited. That Kickstarter did way better than we possibly expected it to do. And we're just thrilled with it. And it's one of those games where the number one thing we heard from people when they just off of the pitch is like, I feel seen. And that's always such a great thing to hear as a designer, that you're really connecting with people and what is resonating with them.
So I was just putting up some of the comments in chat as you're talking. People definitely feeling the love for.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you to your wife.
Perfectly. So, and myself included, I want to kind of touch on probably all of these games, but maybe just in reverse order because you just mentioned it. So I'm also all in on A Place for All My Books. I think the notion of that, like refilling your social battery as a mechanism in the game, is just brilliant. And I really wanted to hear you talk about, I know I watched an interview you did with Kurt Smirk and Dagger, which, by the way, I'm wondering when he's going to rename the company. I don't quite see daggers in this cozy game of books, but the word cozy seemed to be a topic, and I'm curious, like, is this something that you see emerging as like a concept in the industry, or is that just something that you and Kurt kind of whipped up for this game? Like, what's the...
No, so cozy games, that's definitely not us in a vacuum. That's a phrase that's having its heyday right now. There's games like Creature Comforts from Kids Table Board Games. Even Cardboard Alchemy's previous game, Flamecraft, I think a lot of people consider cozy. It means different things to different people. I think for a lot of people, it is a aesthetic as much as anything else. So certain types of art, you'll notice that the art for both Place for All My Books and Critter Kitchen is it's cute, it's soft, it's friendly. In terms of gameplay, it's more so for A Place for All My Books. Critter Kitchen I would not consider cozy because the player interaction is very, I'm going to take the thing that you want. It's not me being mean to you on purpose per se, but it's very, I'm going to get mine and then you can't have yours. And it's, you have feel bad moments. And I think cozy games for most people have a real cap on how much feel bad you're allowed to have in the game. So like A Place for All My Books, I'm doing this little cycle of making my projects, relaxing in my apartment, going out and getting more books. And we're ships passing in the night with the other players. And the things we do can affect them. Like I might get a book that you were trying to get. I might get an item you were trying to get. But it's not confrontational and it's not direct player interaction in the way that some of those other games are. So I think when people say cozy games nowadays, I think they mean both of those things, the aesthetic and also the mechanical interactions.
Type of interactions.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
I also think it's something that people have always liked, but hasn't necessarily been as defined. And now that it's crystallized into this term, it's definitely something that a lot of publishers are chasing. And I'm sure just like any other trend, it'll probably have ebbs and flows. I don't think it's going to be I don't think you'll see games 5 years, 10 years from now marketed as a cozy game as like the only selling point. I think it's not, once the novelty wears off, it has to, just like any other genre, has to do more and transcend just that.
Gotcha. By the way, Picnic, yes, I saw your test. Thank you. Stephen, we'll get back to your question about differences between designers and developers. Stephen also mentioned he hears that cozy is huge in the video game space, I guess.
Yeah, I think Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, games where you can just sort of lose yourself doing mundane things for the satisfaction of completing tasks. Low stakes, I think, maybe is part of it too, right? In A Place for All My Books, it's just it's almost nothing stakes wise, right? It's I'm having fun in my apartment and I'm collecting books. You know, there's no saving the world. There's no imminent danger. There's no life or death. It allows people to sort of have that comfort level of knowing no matter what happens, there's not a bad outcome.
Got it. I could definitely see several games that I have that I enjoy that suddenly like fit into that picture. Do you feel that that's like a design goal of yours, or is it just happened to be that particular game? It's not really a kind of a focal point for you.
I think it just sort of happened that way. I don't think that I set out to design cozy games. I think I followed both Critter Kitchen and A Place for All My Books were co-designed. So Critter Kitchen, my co-designer was Peter C. Hayward, who's a great designer, has a lot of published games in his own right. Place for All My Books, my co-designer was Mike Mihalsik. Same thing, very prolific designer, has a lot of his own things. And I would say for both of them, we were just trying to follow the fun of what the game is, and it led us to that place that ended up being cozy. We didn't set out to make a cozy game.
Interesting. And so both of these two on top, I don't know if you had said it already, but both of these raised over $1 million on Kickstarter, which is unbelievable. And one, you know, within a year of the other, right? So super well done to you and to your publishers and to your co-designers. Mad respect.
After Critter Kitchen came out, I joked that I was like, "Oh, I'm spoiled because I've only had one Kickstarter and now I'm averaging $1 million." And
yeah, exactly.
The next one was up, and I was like, "Well, there goes my $1 million average," and then it went up.
Oh, good problem to have. And the good news is now so will Widget's Workshop.
Absolutely.
Obviously. Yeah, we have empirical evidence now. So fantastic. Let's see about some of these questions. Stephen was saying he thinks a lot of it is how conflict is handled in these cozy games as well. We're rewinding a little bit, but Stephen had asked, can I get some clarification on the difference between a developer and a designer? Might be a fun topic to cover. I'll also give my own, maybe I'll chime in first, since you already gave some thoughts there. Because I began, Stephen, as you know, I began as a designer back in 2012. I think we tried to self-publish Mars versus Earth, which you know well, back under a totally different brand, totally different company. And of course, believed my passion, right? Designing. This is what I wanted to do, was going to pitch games, and I got some games signed with publishers like Thundergriff, and then I had a few partners, and we got other games signed with Alley Cat and AEG and so on. And then fast forward many years, in 2018, Darren and I from that other company both wanted to get into the publishing side. We wanted to, to try our hand at the business side of things. So we established Phase Shift Games. So we kept that alongside the other company, and eventually the other company was just absorbed into Phase Shift. But through the course of my excursion into publishing land, what I quickly discovered was the games that we were signing, starting with Dungeon Drop and beyond, I ended up playing this new role that at the time I might not have even realized what it was called, and that is the developer role. And not only did I start playing that very strongly, I also really enjoyed it. And to this day, I take a heavy hand in the development of these things, working alongside the designer, trying to bring out the designer's intent in a way that is balanced and marketable and kind of fits these other aspects that the business side, the publishing side need to think about. So for me, it actually was a big epiphany, this idea of this development role and how important it really is. Not to diminish the artist and their rights and recognition and the designer, but it definitely is an important role in the ecosystem of the entire publishing process. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I don't know if you had more to say on that.
No, I think that's very very concise and accurate. It's your considerations as a developer are much more about the game as a product and how it fits into the overall vision that the publisher has than just what makes the best game. So a lot of times in my development work for Pandasaurus, the things I would have to care about is, well, this game currently is, 2 to 4 players. We think we could sell, 20% more units if we can get a 5th player in there. Can you make the game go to a 5th player in a way that works? Or can you add a solo mode? Or can you reduce the card count by, 40% so that we can sell it for $5 less MSRP, or all kinds of things like that, where as a designer, it behooves you to think about those things, right, when you're pitching to publishers, but it's not always your first priority. You're just kind of, how can I make this game the best thing possible? Development a lot of times is, how can I make this product the best thing possible? And we'll get into this more when we talk about Widget's Workshop, but some of the stuff you did in development, I think, has really taken it from like a good game and a good product to a great game and a great product. So I'm really excited to talk about that.
Well, it may be the perfect segue. Steven said that makes a lot of sense. And thank you, Picnic, for the kudos as well. All right. So let's segue then to the game of the hour. To start, before I dive into any questions there, I want to play a 1-minute video. Chaz Marler from Watch It Played had created this as part of a new series that he's kicking off called Game Night Picks. And this was essentially an advertisement for Widget's Workshop that he created as part of that series in a recent episode. It's 1 minute long, so let's play that. And then
this episode that you're watching right now was made possible in part by Widget's Workshop from Phase Shift Games. Widget's Workshop presents an instant workshop with infinite possibilities, featuring an innovative blend of card crafting and set collection within a real-world spatial game environment. You customize your creations using a pile of 80 custom-shaped part cards, pulling parts from a pile, but using only one finger to find the best cards for the robots and golems that you construct. Many of the part cards are going to be partially hidden in the rubble or even flipped upside down, rewarding deduction and a little push your luck. The result uses the very imprecision of spatial games and turns that imprecision into the very mechanism that makes Widget's Workshop possible. The player who completes the most optimized sets of constructs from among the chaotically cascading cards wins the game. And you can be a winner by following the link in this video's description to be notified when the Widget's Workshop BackerKit campaign begins on March 13th. And then prepare to drop some parts and build some awesome constructs.
Couldn't have said it better myself. But what is this?
What is that? A blast from the past, you say?
Wow. Why don't you tell us how you even thought of the game that became Widget's Workshop? And this might come up.
So this game has been a long time in the cooker. I mentioned earlier that we had met way back in the ancient times of 2016, 2017 in Connecticut. And Expansity was the first game I ever designed. And I think the second game I ever designed is what would eventually become Widget's Workshop. The name of it at the time was Reliquary, which you're holding the prototype there. So it's a little play on words. Most of my game designs start as a pun of some sort. So it's like a reliquary, which is like where you hold a valuable historical artifact, but also a relic query. And it was square cards. You were an archaeologist trying to collect different items. And the corners of the cards each had a different clue about that item. So color in the top left, shape in the top right, letter in the bottom left, number in the bottom right. Every type of card only had 5 incidences of itself, but those clues were sort of mixed up across the different items. There were something like 20 different items, and the crown, like you just held up, might be a blue circle B2, but there might be another item that's a blue circle B3 or a blue triangle A2. So it could have in between 0 and 4 identical clues around the corners. And then this was, I think, pre-drop games, right? This was before Dungeon Drop even. Yep. And so it was just, I wanted it to be a quick setup, quick cleanup kind of game, which you're all about. So it's no wonder that you liked it at the time. So you take half the cards face up, half face down, shuffle them all together, dump them on the table in a big messy pile, and it was meant to look like an archaeological site. So the back of the cards looked like dirt, and the front of the cards had the items, but also that dirt background. So once it's spread out on the table, it looked like this big dirt pile. And you'd see maybe one or two corners of a thing sticking out, even if you couldn't see the item itself. And so on your turn, you could either draw 2 face-up, I think at the time it was 2 face-up cards or 3 face-down cards. And you were basically trying to collect those sets of items using partial information from what could be seen. And that was kind of it. That's still the core of the game, essentially. But at the time, it was just a very, like, you have a hand of cards and you're just trying, you would get the sets and you would book them. I think the fundamental math of it really hasn't changed that much.
Right. Yeah, no, we've carried that forward, obviously, into now it's element and organic versus mechanical and all those different attributes with the robots and the golem. But do you recall what your inspiration, like what sparked that idea? Because it is very different. Whether it was dropping or just spreading out or whatever. I mean, just the fact that you created a spatial game where the spatial mattered in a unique way that's never been done before, especially way back then. Like, yeah, what was your inspiration?
I wish I could remember. It's been so long at this point. I will say, I think it might have just been a function of me not knowing what I was doing. There's a weird kind of confidence that comes from not knowing any of the rules. And so honestly, like when I started designing games, I wasn't a huge hobby game player. Like, I played some board games, but I wasn't a heavy enthusiast. Right. And so I don't think I had conventions stuck in my head about like, well, you can't just dump all the cards on the table. So yeah, maybe it was pick up sticks. Like it's, I think it came from a place of liking the thematic feeling of digging through a pile of something and getting clues, right? The idea of this card that that feeling of discovery of finding something and then maybe thinking you have treasure when it's actually trash or vice versa.
And I know when I saw it, which was, I don't know if it was before Phase Shift existed, but it certainly was.
Yeah, it was way before Phase Shift.
It was way before, okay.
Yeah.
I knew I loved it and I wanted to see it succeed. And I probably, for me, the notion of a spatial game. So I'm a old school gamer. I came from Magic the Gathering days. I came from Warhammer 40K and Necromunda and some of those heavier like miniatures games. So the miniatures games, obviously spatial, measuring with a ruler and all that, and kind of line of sight, but have one inherent problem that some people can't get past, which is the judgment call. Is that really in range? It's like right on the edge. Is it over the line or under the line? Even in Dungeon Drop, which is a spatial game where you're drawing lines, we take a very casual approach to it. But even that still you could have this situation. Is that treasure really in the room or not? And what I absolutely fell in love with from day one and still to this day is that this takes that imprecision and it makes it work for the game instead of against it. Because now it's that imprecision that you're like, I really think that may be the thing I'm looking for. I'm going to take the chance. That right there, I just think it's magic. And I always did.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I think that I guess the difference would be, right, comparing those two, is that in this one, you're making the choice for yourself. So if you mess up the thing, right, you're doing it to yourself versus a war game where if your opponent is measuring, then they get to choose what's happening to you. So
you bet. Yep. I don't know. Maybe that makes it more cozy.
Yeah.
So then, whenever we did start Phase Shift,
right. So it was before you started Phase Shift, so you weren't looking for games to publish, and this game actually got signed very quickly. So when it was Reliquary, I think I signed it in 2017. So it was before Expansity even came out. I had no published games, and Reliquary got signed, and I was like, great, another game signed, fantastic. And I will not name the publisher. They're lovely people. I love working with them. It stayed there for a good 8 years of just not happening, or 7 years, whatever it was from 2017 to now. It was always, it'll be next year. It'll be next year. And you were in my ear, I think, from year 2 through when we eventually signed this, saying, have you thought about asking for that game back?
Well, because so when we did start Phase Shift, I probably came to you immediately and said that should be our first game, because I felt like it was the essence of what Phase Shift stands for, which is pushing a dimensional boundary of some kind, and this pushes a boundary in a very unique way. It still does to this day. But you obviously explained it was already signed, and that bugged me. But I also really wanted the game, so I couldn't wait for it to come out. And by the way, yes, the other publisher, they're friends. They're in the, great guys. So I was waiting for it like you, and I was just really, really wanting it. But then year over year, nothing came out. And so I was like, so is this thing ever going to happen? And if not, what are the chances that they might be like, hey, take it back? Because I really want to publish this. This belongs. And now that we know what to call some of these things, there's the card crafting. There's clearly what we now have termed the drop style, that you start the game with, and then throwing things back in the pile. That's just like it fits perfectly alongside Dungeon Drop, Drop Drive, and the rest of the line. So thankfully, it wasn't too long ago, right, that you got it back.
Yeah, it was honestly from like when I asked for it back finally to when you signed it was, I don't know, maybe a month. And then that was 6 months ago. You've moved very quickly. You've moved significantly more quickly than they did.
Well, so also, I think it might have been because of this campaign that BackerKit's running called Pocketopia. Was it Gen Con or Essen? It was probably Essen, October. Where are we? March? Yeah, it was Essen, October. I was at a party with them. They hosted an axe throwing party one evening, and Martin Poole came over with Jason Fury and said, hey, we're running this thing called Pocketopia. So they told me all about it. Portable games, small box, and it's going to be on BackerKit, which normally we just do Kickstarter, but because this seemed like a unique opportunity to get like a small game that otherwise normally wouldn't get the spotlight of a full Kickstarter campaign, I said, oh, that's really interesting. I don't have a game like that right now. We're really focused on, at the time, Etherspire, 3D Strategy, and some other big projects that we have in the works. And then I said, wait a minute. And this maybe was the kick in the pants, for me at least, to reapproach you and say, what do you think the chances are? Because we could put this right into Pocketopia. And I said we would move fast, because this thing was up in March.
You absolutely did. So that's been great. Yeah, I would say for anyone who doesn't work in board games, right, just so they know, the average time from when a game gets signed to when it comes out is typically probably 2 to 3 years, depending on the company. Yeah. The longest I've ever had for a game that actually did come out was 5 years, and the shortest was this, which is 6 months. So, yeah.
And I will stand by. Not a single corner was cut.
No.
It is a simpler game to publish, so because of that, we could fit it into that time frame.
But honestly, like for how fast the turnaround is, it's actually really, really impressive how much you did change and upgrade from what it was. So you were just holding up the reliquary cards. If you want to just show that next to what it is now in terms of like the differences. I as a developer, I've worked on games that I've spent twice as long developing that have changed a lot less.
So here's a reliquary card. Here is our first prototype card for Widget's Workshop. We had them as hexagonal cards just for the prototype, fully opaque, a generic icon in the middle, and we did introduce these elements, and then organic versus mechanical, and then strong versus speedy in the corner there. We had the concept of the gear shape. And you and I know we're tossing around, should we make the actual cut, outline the gear shape, or just keep it as a hex? Wasn't quite sure at the time. So this was our earlier prototype. And then fast forward from there to our now, this is still just prototype, but it is fully printed here with the clear centers, and now we have unique illustrations in the middle. So there's an arm and a leg, and I would have to find in the pile the torso and the other arm and the other leg, but they would complete the picture of a full mech and a unique name up on the top there. And so from this, which certainly, as you said, let me get it centered. There we go. Certainly has a lot of the same mechanisms in terms of you're still trying to find the right icons in the corners or in the different areas that are partially hidden, but in a totally different theme and obviously a fairly advanced style of card.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it was you or someone else suggested it to you in terms of the transparency, but
that I believe was Scott Smith, the designer of Dungeon Drops. So one of the things that we love doing, we when we go to these big conventions, we tend to get an Airbnb with a lot of our designers who are there helping us demo. And in the evenings, we get a lot of good brainstorming, innovation, playing each other's prototypes and stuff like that. And obviously Scott is, close with us. He's designed several games, and we have several more that we're still working with him on. And so he was playing this one evening there, the prototype with the hex cards, and he's just looking at it, and his brain immediately went to, I want to create the robot. They're 5 cards, and I'm putting them all side by side. He's like, I want to put them together. And it was like, boom. So yes.
Yeah, well, huge kudos to Scott then, because I love what that does. I feel like it just elevates it so much because
that's perfect.
It's doing the same thing mechanically, but the satisfaction you get from physically assembling your golem is just so much nicer than just putting 5 cards next to each other.
Yeah. And then we do have there's some other neat little modules. So there's a pizza module. There's a little bit of a story that goes along with it, but there's a pizza card. So it's essentially like a pizza break. So we're in the workshop, we're working all day assembling our robots and golems. And now this is Boblin Bites pizza break. There's like little goblin bites on the pizza itself, if you can see it there. So it ties it. Oh, obviously Widget. I should have said Widget is our gear golem from Dungeon Drop. So not only is it in the Drop style line, but it's also in the Dungeon Drop universe. Boblin, of course, is our goblin hero who has joined the ranks of the heroes.
Yeah, you have the PSCU, the Phase Shift Cinematic Universe.
So it's unclear whether Boblin is in the pizza or just likes the pizza.
Little column A, little column B.
Yeah, it's unknowable. But that actually came out because BackerKit promotes this whole collaboration thing where 2 projects will team up and do a collaboration where if you back this project, Widget's Workshop, and our collaborators project during the campaign that everyone launches on March 13th, then both campaigns will throw in some additional module or freebie or promo or whatever. So we were working with a game called Pizza Rolls at the time. He was going to launch on BackerKit. He ended up backing out because he wanted to launch on Kickstarter. Totally his, just what he felt he needed to do. So we were partnered with a pizza game. And so I said, we'll make a pizza break module. Well, we're not partnered with him anymore. He ran his campaign, very successful on Kickstarter. But I loved this module so much. I said, we're just putting it in. It's just going to be a permanent module now. And now we have a new collaboration partner. I should give him a shout out really quick. The game is called Super Battle Mon. And Quinn is the designer there. And Super Battle Mon is a TCG. So your trading card game, you're buying a booster pack of 7 random cards. So has a little bit of that magic vibe going on, but the difference is I think A, there's no rarities or anything like that. B, what's probably the most interesting thing here is with this game, it's meant to be, I think you can play standing up. It's a 7-card deck. That's the whole deck. It's not a 40-card deck. So you can just buy one of these little packs. You already have an army. And if you buy more of them, you can randomize and pick any 7 or choose which 7 you want. It doesn't matter. Any 7 cards. So a really interesting model. And we are now collaboration partners with him. And so if you back both of our games, we will give you, I don't have a physical version of it, but an accessory called Pandemonium. It's like a ether spirit that you can accessorize one of your robots or golems, and you kind of attach it to it. You add it to the stack. and it will provide basically some wild symbols, but at a cost. So that's a promo card that you'll get from us. And likewise for his game, he built a Golem character using our artwork, because I'm using his artwork for the promo card. So he has the same, essentially the same art from the cover here. Widget and the little guy that he's building will be on a card in his game if you back both of our games. Anyway, that's why the pizza card's here. And then we have yet another module that we worked on over the last month or two called Arcane Accessories. And all the details, of course, will be on the BackerKit page. So yeah, this game's been developed quite a bit.
Yeah.
What else can we say? So March 13th is the date. There are, I think, like 70 different publishers that are all launching on the same day, which I'm a little nervous about. That's a lot. That's a lot of saturation. That's a lot of different campaigns that are all going to be competing for the same kind of eyeballs. I am happy that at the moment we are project number 2 in terms of total followers. We're the second highest tabletop board game. He has some RPGs that are going to launch on the same day as well. So I kind of, they're not the same audience, I don't think. But yeah, so stand to do well. Obviously, we're on the track for $1 million.
That's right.
So, all right. Anything else about Widget's workshop? So we got these different prototypes. Reliquary was the interesting source. Thrilled that it is. I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to keep this because I know 10 years from now we're going to be looking back and wishing we had a copy of the original version there.
I guess my house. The longer I do this, the more corners of my house are just full of old prototypes that I can't bear to part with emotionally. I have like 4 different versions of Expansity, from like Legos all the way up to like 3D printed stuff, and yeah.
Amen. Oh, so we also developed these. In fact, I have 2 different. I have an older prototype version, but this is the newer.
Yes. Yeah, these are awesome.
Neoprene mat as well. Probably it's not coming through very well there on the camera, but these are great. They're unnecessary. You can play the game, of course, without them. They're cosmetic, but they're a little more functional than just a purely cosmetic mat, because it has space for these 3 bays where you're going to put your 5 different part cards as you're building. Of course, each robot or golem needs to have an arm, right arm, right leg, left leg, and torso. And so you have the spots for them. And then as you complete it, you kind of assemble, which is the awesome part there. You can see your robot and its name, but you also figure out that it's a 25 point or it's a 15 point or whatever. And then you can move that stack of cards right down to the bottom of the mat where there's a spot for 15 points, 20 points, 25 points, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it definitely makes the gameplay more seamless in that regard, or it makes it a little easier. So we are also really proud of the price that we were able to.
I was going to ask if you wanted to talk about that, because I was blown away when I found out the margins, the what do you call it, the cost per goods of this.
Yeah, we're thrilled. We've talked with a lot of different manufacturers, and clearly some are bred for, or they are just much more suited for transparent PVC printing on both sides. Like I can only assume, based on the quotes that we got, that some are just, it's not quite their bread and butter. They're outsourcing it to someone else or whatever. But yeah, we this box. So it's a small box game. I don't want to dump all the. There we go. It's a small box game, same size box as Obelisk, for those who saw that previous game of ours. In fact, we're going to pair the 2 together during the campaign. You can add a copy of Obelisk if you haven't already. They just pair together nicely. Really small, lightweight. Yes, this will be, the base tier will be $15. That is cheaper than the normal version, the retail version of Dungeon Drop 6 years ago or 7 years ago was on Kick. That was 16, and then the deluxe was higher. So $15
for the amount of game in the box. It's a crazy price point. I'm super glad you were able to get it out for that.
Retail will be higher, 20 probably, but
Even that though, that's still pretty good for, you know.
Even the mats. So 5 of those, and we're going to have embroidered edging. So really nice deluxe. 5 of those will be 25. So the 15 plus the 25, if you want the all in, that's it. There's no further deluxe version. This is already deluxe. So really proud of that price point that we were able to hit. And I hope that should do further wonders for the campaign. Okay, so what else, Alex? Any future like what else are you working on besides this? And now that this is kind of going to the next leg of the manufacturing.
Yeah. Well, so I have a bunch of projects, bunch of irons in the fire. I can't talk about specifics for a lot of them, but my co-designer for Critter Kitchen and I, Peter C. Hayward, have a couple of upcoming designs. We have another game that Cardboard Alchemy will be doing that no information has been released about yet, so I can't say anything, but it's going to be a big game, so we're very excited about that. Like big game. And then we have a few games, not cozy.
Not cozy.
Very not cozy. We have a few games with All Play that are coming out soon. The publisher All Play. So one of them is a follow-up to one of Peter's games that we just had a great idea for a sequel to. And then I also have a couple of games coming up with Mike Mihalsik, who is my co-designer for A Place for All My Books. One of those is going to be All Play as well. And then we, just based off of the initial success of A Place for All My Books, we've already started working on a follow-up to that. So I don't know anything about when that
follow-up separate game, you mean, or
a separate standalone game in the same world, same cozy vibes, but not like an expansion, but like an actual second game. Okay. So I mean, it's early days. Who knows what'll happen? But those are what's in the works right now.
A Place for All My Board Games. I know
we've gotten that request a lot. Yeah.
Yes, during the campaign, a lot of people wanted to see board games built into it.
There's I feel like it's been done though, right? Isn't there that one that just came out, like Tabletop Inc. or something? Or My Shelfie? Yeah. I'm not opposed to it, but I think there's something very board game adjacent about books that was really resonating with people. So we'll see. Yes. We'll see where the design journey leads us. But those are the main things. And then I'm also doing just hodgepodge development work on a bunch of things that nothing to like talk about, I guess. But and then hopefully more games with Phase Shift in the future. I have stuff that you and I are excited to talk about.
So. I would love that. I know you and I were talking just before the show here tonight, reminiscing on some of our earlier projects. Again, before Phase Shift even existed, you and I had a game that we'd love both to see rekindled, and who knows if it'll turn into Phase Shift or something, but that was Kraken Skulls. There are pictures out on the internet. People could search for it and find it.
Yeah.
It was we had prototypes, I think, published.
Well, that one was signed as well, right? That was signed for a little bit and then came back.
Yep.
I think that was I was going to say that was the third game I ever worked on. So it was Expansity, then Reliquary, and then that one with you were the my first 3 games. And then that's one. I'm glad that this one is now having its time in the sun, and I would really love for that one to do the same. So.
Come back. Well, where did ITA fall in? Because I had just seen a picture that I was like, International Travel Agency. I worked on that one with Alex too. Wasn't that even before?
It might have been. We did that for like a Button Shy contest or something.
I think so. Yeah.
I don't even remember how it worked, honestly. I remember we did I did like really rudimentary graphic design for that. I remember that Mars game you were talking about. I remember I did a Photoshop pass on that for you. Yeah. Yes. It's funny because like I said, you were one of the first people I ever knew in board games. So like our paths crossed a lot in the early days. Yeah.
In fact, someone was asking me recently if Mars versus Earth might ever come back and hit the front burner because it really was just self-published. We had an entry up on the Game Crafter, and that was it. But my issue or my thought there, and I'm curious, welcome comments, feedback from everyone. It's a social deduction game, and right off the bat, does hearing that, because a lot of time has passed, it was the hot thing And then it was the passe thing, and then it was like the taboo thing, like don't even talk about social deduction. But I wonder, at some point, does this come full circle, and people might look for a really
you just have to find a way to make it cozy. Cozy social deduction. Yeah, probably not. In order of priority, I would love for the one we worked on together to be de-backburnered, followed by Queen's Quest, which I love. I know it's changed a lot since I played it, but and then maybe Mars versus Earth. But Queen's Quest was great. I love that game.
Yes, in fact, I don't believe you played it in the most recent iteration.
No, I don't think so. Not since I lived in Connecticut. So that would have been at least 6 years ago.
I built in a drop mechanism into it. At first, as kind of just not a joke, but more of an experiment. Like, what would happen if I, instead of putting the cubes on the grid, I'm just dropping the cubes, and then wherever they fall is where they fall. And it worked out really well. And then I developed that further, and I'm like, well, this just makes sense with the line at this point. So yeah, when we launched that is a for those who don't know, those who are on our local Discord server. This is people rag on me all the time. Why isn't it out yet? It's a game I designed, but I designed it 10 years ago. It won a Game Crafter contest in 2016, a dungeon crawler contest, I believe. And it was going to be the first game for Phase Shift because Reliquary wasn't available. It was going to be the first game, but it's a bigger one. It's a dungeon crawler, not complicated, just bigger. There's more stuff going on. And we were like a little timid, and we said, well, what if we do a side project first? We just saw this thing that won the components only challenge, which was Dungeon Drop. And so we said, let's do that as like a testing the waters, kind of a side project, a little thing just to get our hands dirty. And look what happened.
It's a good one to test the waters with.
Yeah. Haven't gotten back to Queen's Quest, and now it's an entire, line, multiple lines and franchise and spin-off games. So,
yeah. Well, it's always you're a designer, I'm a designer. One of those things is you get some distance from a game and you go back and you're like, what was I thinking then? So it's always fun to go back and update things with your newer design sensibilities. I mean, Reliquary is actually a good example of like the core of it was so solid that it didn't change a lot. But even then, I think like the changes you made really updated it for 2024. Like it does not feel like an older design at this point. It feels like something very fresh. So.
Oh, and I wanted to mention too, before we landed at it being robot themed or golem themed, which pulled in the character from Dungeon Drop, which is great. But before that, obviously the archaeology theme certainly works, and I like that as well. But in the middle, we were talking about like Jurassic, like bones, dinosaur bones, and building, trying to collect the entire fossil for a dinosaur. Jurassic Pile was a possible name for it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if there were other interesting themes along the way, but essentially anything where there's a pile of rubble. Oh, somebody, yes, we polled in our Discord, and the other one that rose up to the top was like an arcane library, interesting library books, like just
a place for all my magical books.
Then you're trying to reassemble the shelves properly. Yeah,
I know the one I threw out was. It was very similar to what it ended up being, I think, but it wasn't the robot. It was the Boblin selling collecting sets of adventure gear from like a scrap heap in a dungeon. And
yep.
But I'm really happy with where it landed. I think the widget is adorable, and the way that the cards all slot together just works with the theme.
Yep, super stoked about it. Great job on the design, obviously, and this is just like a full, like, it just feels like a love story 10 years in the making, that landed at the right spot. So outside of your design games, what do you play? What games do you like playing? What are you and your group working on these days or playing?
Yeah, I don't play nearly as many games as I'd like to. I think I have two little kids. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and most of my free time goes most of my work time goes towards design and development projects. So I don't get to play quite as many published games as I like. But my older kid especially is now at an age where he's just starting to get into board games. So I've been playing some of like the Habba ones with him. So like Animal Upon Animal and Rhino Hero and things like that. Even just like classics like Uno and War and things like that. For myself personally, I really like abstracts. So I play a lot of chess. I play one of my favorite games of all time is Shobu from Smirk and Dagger.
Yep.
I love that game. If anyone here is a fan of abstracts, I highly, highly recommend Shobu. I'm actually the North Carolina state champion for Shobu. They have a competition at Tantrum Con. That was fun. But so I'll play that with my wife Nicole. And then what else have I played recently?
Do you like Crokinole?
Oh, I love Crokinole. I'm a sneaky shark at Crokinole.
Really?
Go in, it's like sink it. Yeah.
I just just got the Mayday table, which is it's a decent table, and we're having a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, I like party games. Not the right word. I like group lighter card games. So something like a push or a no thanks, or things that you can play multiple rounds of very quickly while talking and not having to focus entirely on the game. When I play games for fun, I definitely am using them more as like a social lubricant as opposed to like wanting to like play the game for depth. I will say the one exception to that is as part of the new game that Peter Hayward and I are designing for Cardboard Alchemy, which is a heavy, heavy, heavy beast. I have been playing a couple of heavier games as a sort of homework research thing for what's good in that space. So things like what's it called? Why can I not remember the name of it? It's like a heavy Western game. There's a river.
Western meaning old, like 1800, 1700.
Yeah, what is it called? Oh well, I don't know. I have a terrible memory for things, but it's an Alexander Pfister game.
Okay,
just came out. That
not
came out like 2 years ago. Hang on.
Yeah, I know.
I know. I got to look it up. I'll try and keep talking while I'm looking it up. But Dwellings of Eldervale, I liked.
Harmonies. You like the abstract?
Boone Lake. That was it.
Boone Lake. I don't know that one.
Boone Lake. Yeah. But anyway, so
have you tried Harmonies?
I haven't. I've heard really good things.
Yeah. Based on the ones that you said, I think that one you'd probably really like. And then the other one that I like taking to like restaurants as we're waiting for food, kind of thing. That idea of just a social lubricant. Love that phrase. Is Skull. I was only recently introduced to it. That's great. That's such a nice.
Skull is very good. Yeah. Yeah. Any of those like cockroach poker or things like that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's probably great for tonight. This is awesome having you here. You are on fire, my friend. So keep it up.
Thank you.
You have some amazing projects in the works, and love to see what's coming next from you. And maybe FaceShift will be able to be a participant in one of those projects. So thanks for being here with us. And obviously, we're going to be talking more. We're going to be live streaming more together as we roll into next week when we launch. So for everyone watching, thanks. And please join us on day one. You know how important that day one back is. It is so crucial. So March 13th it's an odd time perhaps because it's coordinated with all 70 publishers. So it's 10 a.m. Pacific time. So that's 1 p.m. Eastern time. So a little different, a little later than normal, but that's Thursday next week. It's also not Tuesday, which most of these campaigns launch on. So that's interesting. But please do check that out. Hopefully you're already clicked to sign up to be notified. So you'll get notified, obviously, that day. We'll live stream probably starting about half an hour before, so about 12:30 Eastern, rolling into, and then we'll probably play the intro video live and kind of have some fun watching that. And I think with that, thank you so much, Alex, again, for being with us.
Thank you, Jason, and thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. We will talk to you all soon. Bye.